Hey guys, so we all know Figuarts can get quite expensive, and that led me to thinking, would I ever stop collecting them? In short, the answer would most likely be a reluctant yes. Or not fully, but I consider passing on more releases. So this video is slightly different than the usual top 5 figures videos I usually put out, and that's because, as the title suggests, I'll be talking about 5 figures that, if ever got released, would leave me pretty satisfied and consider stepping out of collecting the line. Now before I start my list here, I want to make note that the figures that I've chosen are the ones that either represent one of my favorite characters or just all around complete a saga from the DBZ more than Super. Now that isn't to say that there aren't figures from Super that I'd love to have, like Bergamo or even maybe Kefla. By the way, would anyone even want a Narirama figure? But anyways, like I was saying, these are figures that I would feel would really round up my collection, not only on a representational level of Dragon Ball Z, but on a personal level as well. So here goes, the figures that if were released would possibly make me consider hanging up the Figuarts collecting robes. So first up was a hard slot to fill because there's a ton of characters I could accept as kind of a lower tier keystone piece here, but after some consideration and a little irony, I think my most desired piece or pieces coming to kick this list off would be a battle damaged Buu Saga Vegeta in Super Saiyan 2, as well as a battle damaged Goku in Super Saiyan 2 as well. Despite the fact that we have a ton of Goku and Vegeta figures with a ton more on the way, I feel at least these two versions have much more weight to them. And hey, if we can swap out various heads on the 2.0s we already have, then in my eyes that's a primo plus. In addition, I think I've mentioned before that the fight between these two, although Vegeta is Majin, is probably one of the most nostalgic and favorite among the Dragon Ball Z fights for me. Now just for contrast, I was considering something like an official Ginyu release, but I mean Ginyu alone just doesn't have that same weight behind him as these two together would. Alright, so I've covered my first pick, and now second up on this list is someone who I've covered a while back in an episode of Future Figuarts, and really I'm kind of surprised that I'm still staying consistent with this pick, but when I think about it, I feel it's the only major Saiyan Saga character left to have, save for a Krillin re-release, and that is Raditz. Now if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of variety within the line, especially when it comes to the Saiyans, and I feel like just like with Nappa, Raditz adds just that. I mean, granted, it's kind of just like putting a Super Saiyan 3 hair sculpt on a figure slightly shorter than Nappa, but hey, still a separate canon character nonetheless. But yeah guys, I wouldn't feel like my Dragon Ball Z Figuarts collection would be complete without the addition of Raditz, just because he's such a crucial part of the saga that started it all for me. Alright, next up is Supreme Kai. I would just love to have this figure so much. I mean, April Fools. Come on, you knew that was coming, right? Alright, so for real. Next up is a character that's grown on me rather quickly throughout the past few years, and that is Piccolo, which leads me to say that although I have a Piccolo in my collection, the colors from the manga don't quite make it feel such a wholesome part of my collection as much as it would if, 1, I had the SDCC version, or 2, and better yet, an updated 2.0 sculpt version with a special beam cannon effect part to go with it. If I were to imagine my display cabinet a few years down the road with the possibility of the line still going on strong, however with me bowed out of it with no regrets, then yeah, you can bet I definitely want to be able to look at my display and say, you know what, I've got a pretty solid Piccolo figure, I'm good. Especially if my kids get into Dragon Ball. Or wait, let me rephrase that, when they get into Dragon Ball. Alright, so right here is probably my third favorite movie villain, and that is Janemba, or Super Janemba if we're getting technical about it. Much like Raditz and Piccolo, I've covered Janemba in a Future Figuarts episode quite a while back, and now, with the soon-to-be released Gogeta Blue figure, and quite possible Fusion Reborn STC exclusives on the way, I figured now is the time to start seriously considering Janemba as a figure. I mean, you can't say he isn't as well known since Fusion Reborn was remastered and released again just prior to the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie release, right? Again, to me, this figure is all that in a bag of chips, and by chips I mean it's way different looking than most of the other figures, it's got a wicked color scheme, and Janemba is just an overall badass villain. And in first place, need I really explain why this is on here? I guess it will. Second only to Broly, Cooler is up there in terms of my favorite movie villains, or just villains in general that I really like. Yep, I've also covered this guy in an episode of Future Figuarts, but anyway, Final Form Cooler is just a badass looking character. It's like what you get if you fuse the Triceratops, the color purple, and first form Cell together maybe. But yeah, he's sick, man. And you know what else really drove this character home for me? The soundtrack in the movie. Much like Broly, you've got some Disturbed, the Gravity Pool. Yeah, man, his character in the film was set up to be really epic, and I'd almost be sorely disappointed if he isn't canonized in the same manner as Broly recently was too. But I feel like this is the big fish, so to speak. He looks vastly different than any other figures we currently have, and not only in color scheme and sculpt, but he's on the larger side just like Broly is. Alright guys, so there you have it. If I was to bow out of collecting these figures entirely, these are the 5 figures I really want to have in my collection. I'm sure there are tons of different opinions out there on same circumstances. I'm willing to bet Bardock, Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta, and probably even Videl are on there from some people's list from what I've seen in the comments section down below countless times. But I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm just making a generalization. Let me know. And guys, you know what I always say, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows.